Timon and Puumba's Jungle Games, released in 1997 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System courtesy of THQ, Disney Interactive, and Tiertex Design Studios. Yes, that Tiertex of human killing machine fame is a thing that exists for some reason. A low-budget collection of 4 minigames based on a similarly titled collection of minigames released for Windows a couple years prior, except that version had another game that this SNES version lacked, and that was its own take on the classic puzzle game Puyo Puyo. However, since the Super NES already had a Puyo game in the form of Kirby's Avalanche, it's not hard to see why such a game would not be included here, though really you could say that about any of the games in this collection, but I digress. So this is your main menu, so to speak. You move your cursor around, pick one of the 4 games to play, or go to the options and toggle sound and difficulty settings. Or you can interact with a couple of things on the menu, and the little animation will play out depending on what you click on. Like the bucket, for example, that used to house the bug drop game that was omitted. It's a nice idea on paper, though with only a couple animations here and there to play with, and them not being the best of quality, the whole thing feels perhaps a bit barren. Anyway, your 4 jungle games featured in this jungle game collection are as follows, beginning with Jungle Pinball, which is a regular plain Jane edition of pinball with a Timon and Puumba theme, and to its credit, once you get past the less than stellar pinball physics, it's a perfectly functional pinball video game thing with its fair share of gimmicks and that sort of thing. Plays the part well enough, controls fine with the triggers controlling the flippers and such, and that's all you could really ask for with a game like this. Not much else to say here. Next game on the list is Burper, which is a shooter game where you control Puumba and have to clear away a number of targets before time runs out with your bad breath. You have a limited number of shots to shoot down enemies, but shooting fruit will restore some shots, and if all else fails, you could use your tail to squash any grounded bugs. The game is somewhat functional, though Puumba moves a bit slow for my taste, even by Warthog standards. Watch out for the pieces of furniture or piles of banana, one hit from those and you're out. But then again, taking multiple hits from the ground critters will eventually take you out as well. This is more evident in the later levels. Next up, we have Hippo Hop, which is a unique take on the classic game Frogger from a unique perspective. Guide Timon across the stream, collect the shiny things that appear, and take them to the open patches of grass, which will close up once you leap off. Then, reach the foreground again, ring the little flower bell for another shiny thing to appear, and once the wall of grass is completely closed, it's off to the next level. It's a fairly competent Frogger clone, albeit one that has somewhat less than stellar controls that will be prone to delay every once in a while, but other than that, it's largely inoffensive and mostly functional. Last but not least, we have Sling Shooter, which is a shooting gallery game where you aim a cursor at targets to shoot while avoiding all the friendly folks, because hitting them will cost you points, which is probably the best indicator if you're not familiar with Who's Who. Hit a number of targets within the time allotted and you move on to the next level. Fail to do so and it's game over, and unlike the other games, you only have 1 life here, so you screw up, it's game over. It is what it is, a shooting gallery game where you use the D-pad to control the cursor, and it's not always the greatest thing, but it is functional, so I don't know, take it or leave it. And that's it really. 4 minigames, all of them simple, playable, somewhat competently executed, perfectly fine for the PC master race since they're used to these cheap shovelware minigame collections back in the day, but on the Super Nintendo, this feels like something slapped together to squeeze the last remaining juice out of a dying console market. The best way to describe jungle games is that it's the kind of thing you would expect to play on one of those cheap plug-and-play TV game gimmicks that used to be all the rage back in the 2000s, but since this is on the Super Nintendo and thus on a proper console, the controller used to play the game will never come into question. For the most part, at least. The graphics aren't too bad, all things considered. Some of the background detail have some color degradation and a bit of a grainy quality to it, the type of thing you'd get when turning a high-resolution image into a lower-resolution image with a drastically decreased color count. Look past that, and at least you could say the artwork looks well drawn, as are the various sprites, which look true to the characters even if they don't animate as smoothly. The sound department is a bit lacking, only a handful of tinny sounding music that's thematically appropriate at least, and some rough sounding sound effects. The PC version had some voice bites from the main characters, but this SNES version lacks those, which again makes the whole package feels a bit barren. The best you could say about Timon and Puumba's jungle games is that it's a competently executed collection of minigames, the sort of thing that'd be at home in one of those plug-and-play gimmicks that were all the rage in the 2000s. It does what it does well enough, and there is some fun to be had here if you keep your expectations low enough, but there's nothing on here that isn't done better elsewhere, especially on the Super Nintendo.